Under Coriolanus Snow, Panem's Hunger Games became a tool of oppression and obedience that lasted for over 75 years. Through clever use of marketing strategies and media theory, the system of Panem endured. A system in which all resources and profits are funneled to the elite living in the capital, while the poor are controlled through mass media and state-enforced violence. In this video, we will have a thorough look at Panem's economy and unravel how Coriolanus Snow turned from a teenager in love to a marketing mastermind, and how a 16-year-old was used to turn his own strategies against him. In the near future, climate change destroyed the habitable zones of our planet, and most humans died from lack of food and water. Of the 330 million living in the US, less than 2 million survived and established the country of Panem, split into 13 states, each responsible for different industries, with the capital being in control of all of them. Panem seemed to have worked well in the beginning, but eventually, its institutions were eroded to serve the rich and powerful. The rising inequality created tensions between the capital and the other 13 districts. And as the capital became more authoritarian, it resulted in all-out war. Everyone suffered, but the rebel leaders were the ones who had to give in. They proposed becoming an independent state in District 13 in exchange for ending the war and allowing the capital to create the illusion that 13 was destroyed and uninhabitable. As District 13 tested and built nuclear weapons, it was equipped with highly sophisticated underground bunkers, in which the rebels could wait out 75 years for their chance for redemption. In the meantime, the capital ruled the remaining 12 districts with an iron fist. The capital created a modern-day slave economy. Workers in the districts don't have any rights and are not allowed to travel to other districts to find better jobs. They can only work for the capital for minimal pay. Oligarch families from the capital invest money to build new factories in the districts, but it barely improves people's lives, as their wages do not increase and all resources and products created in the factories are exported. District 12, the home of Katniss Everdeen, has a population of around 9,000 people, and the primary industry is coal mining. The men work 12-hour shifts and get paid just enough to support their families, but not enough to improve their lives. Mining accidents are common, and overall life expectancy for miners is low. When Katniss's father died, her family had no income and had to starve through the winter. From then on, Katniss had to hunt every day for her family to survive. Hunting is punishable by death, but starvation is far more common. District 12 has 3 hours of electricity per day in the evening, and most people don't have hot or filtered water, which makes a range of infections common. Nobody in 12 can afford doctors, so they rely on medicinal healers. While 12 is an extreme case, most other districts are similar, with the exception of 1, 2, and 4. They are the districts who support the capital and the Hunger Games, and in return, they are better off than the rest. While we have extreme poverty on one end, we have unimaginable wealth on the other. Citizens in the capital are not just wealthy, but represent the 0.1% of the planet. They have no shortage of food, electricity, or any kind of manufactured products. They have technology that is more advanced than anything we have today. Medicine that heals your wounds and broken bones in hours, plastic surgery that lets you look like 30 forever, highly specialized chemical products, and gene editing for humans and animals that make CRISPR look like a joke. The food in the capital has been enhanced and perfected to a degree where it is the norm to throw up during a party to eat more afterwards. For capital citizens, consumerism and entertainment are the only things that matter. They are the grown-up Generation Alpha that inherits a fortune from the boomers, but also has a serious social media addiction. And the biggest social media event of every year is the Hunger Games. The event is hyped up and lasts several weeks, from the reaping to the interviews to the actual games. The games are made so entertaining, capital citizens feel bored without them and look forward to the next one. In ancient Rome, bread and games were used to distract the citizens from the emperor weakening the power of the parliament, slowly increasing political and economic inequality. to the point where the Roman Empire became a shadow of its former self. But in Panem, the games didn't start out as entertainment to distract the masses. When they were created, most people in the districts did not have TVs to watch them, and the ones that could did not like seeing children kill each other. Until Coriolanus Snow changed the Hunger Games into what they are today, a spectacle for the masses where all districts watch in anticipation. The only drawback and eventual fall was the capital's complete dependence on the imports from the districts. When the districts rebel, the capital has no way to survive, as it does not produce food or electricity. Snow was aware of this and used it to frighten people, but the system he created was optimized for efficiently subtracting all wealth from the districts to the capital, not for sustainability. Snow himself hated war, not only because of him experiencing it in his childhood, but because of the waste of resources. Also, he would never want to sacrifice himself for anyone. Therefore, he turned the Hunger Games into the only element of population control Panem needs. Let's go back in time and find out how he became a marketing mastermind and the president of Panem. 10 years after the end of the war, Coriolanus Snow is in his last academic year in the capital, where his final task is being a mentor in the Hunger Games. While most of the other students don't make an effort, as they come from rich oligarchy families who control production in other districts, Corio's family has fell from glory during the war. His family was heavily invested in District 13's weapon factories, but as District 13 was destroyed, their wealth vanished. Corio's mother died in childbirth along her baby daughter, and shortly after, his father died in the war. Corio makes the rebels responsible, and his hate is only strengthened when the rebels cut off the food supplies to the capital. People became cannibals in front of his own eyes, and his cousin Tigris had to sell herself for food. They both survive alongside their grandmother, but for Corio, it becomes imperative to rank up in the capital to obtain the power, control, and wealth that he would have inherited as a Snow and is now lacking. During the games, he learns why people, including his cousin Tigris, do not want to watch the Hunger Games. Seeing children die on TV is sickening, unless you have a stake in it. And the easiest way to have a stake, even if you don't like any of the tributes, is to bet on them. Sports betting is a huge industry, and Corio laid the foundation that would finance the games. Besides betting, he also implemented sponsorships. Rich people would sponsor tributes, giving them an advantage or keeping them alive during the games. And to get even the poor districts engaged with the games, the winning district receives food and supplies, and the winners their own house, with groundkeepers and cleaners who take care of it, as well as a significant monthly pension for the rest of their lives. Instead of treating the tributes like animals, they will get properly fed and prepared for the games, with interviews and marketing stunts to elevate the drama. And of course, every household in Panem will receive a functioning TV, so that everybody can actually watch the games. Because at the time of the 10th games, nearly nobody in District 12 had a TV or a proper reception. The only thing they saw of the games was the reaping ceremony. Corio's influence transformed the 10th Hunger Games. Without him, the capital would have stopped the games entirely. He was a smart young man, but that doesn't automatically turn him into a ruthless dictator. So we have to dig a bit deeper into what happened during and after the 10th games, mainly with his tribute Lucy. The closer he got to her, the more he wanted to control her, the more he wanted her to be his. His twisted sense of love was interpreted by Lucy as real love, and she developed feelings for him. To secure Corio's enrollment into university and to keep Lucy for himself, he cheats in the games. But the Dean and Game Master find out, and as a punishment, he gets sent to District 12 as a peacekeeper. Being a peacekeeper is a 20-year contract in which you can't get married or have children, but it guarantees you food and money, and previous debts are forgiven. He finds Lucy in 12, and because he believes that he has no future in the capital anymore, he decides to create a future with her, despite them having polarizing opinions about the political system of Panem.
capital's not for me.
At least it's civilized, has order.
Well, the Hunger Games are order?
As he is getting used to his new life, his classmate Sejanus puts their future at risk. Sejanus is the personification of everything Koryu has lost through the war. Sejanus' family runs weapon factories in District 2, and after 13 was destroyed, they gained the market share and wealth the Snow family had. Sejanus is openly anti-capital and anti-games, and naive how he is, he doesn't understand that his family's wealth cannot protect him forever. Because Sejanus does not value his privilege, Koryu resents him, yet clings onto him, like the future he once had. To Koryu's surprise, he is suddenly ordered to military school in District 2, which opens up the possibility of a future in the capital. But at the same time, Sejanus conspires with a few rebels and helps them to buy guns. Koryu secretly records his confession, and when he confronts Sejanus, he murders an unarmed woman with no remorse. Scared of getting caught for murder, Koryu and Lucy leave 12, after Sejanus gets hanged for treason. Koryu does not feel sadness or shame from betraying Sejanus. In his mind, Sejanus would have gotten himself killed anyway. Koryu even delayed the inevitable by saving his life earlier. After Koryu and Lucy leave 12, they find the gun Koryu used, and Lucy finally sees his true form. If he disposes the weapon and cuts all loose ends, he can get back to the capital. He can still become a true Snow. While he is overwhelmed with this sudden realization, Lucy leaves. He goes after her and tries to kill her, but fails. Back in 12, he finds out that he was only sent there to broaden his worldview. He travels back to the capital and starts a game maker internship at the university. He realizes that he prefers influence and power over love because love manipulated him, and that the games have to go on. They are part of the eternal war against the rebels. If the war is impossible to end, the capital has to control it. The Hunger Games serve as a proxy war, a reminder of savage human nature that enforces the social contract of the capital, while keeping the masses complacent. When Koryu comes back to the capital, he is transformed, and Tigris sees his father's hatred in him. Snow wasn't born evil, but the loss of both parents at a young age, war trauma, and his sociopathic tendencies turned him into a man obsessed with control. Being groomed by his evil mentor only quickened his transformation into an authoritarian dictator. While we don't know exactly how Snow became president, we can assume that the transformation of the games was mostly his doing, and it gained him enough popularity to step up from game maker to president, while disposing his opposition by poisoning them. The most important thing he did early on as a game maker was changing the framing of the Hunger Games. Only very few people want to watch a movie exclusively focused on violence, but most don't mind the violence if it's within context of a story. Snow turned violence into story elements. He understood that people keep watching because of the drama in between the violence, not the violence itself. And when done correctly, tension builds up in the anticipation of a conflict and gets released through violence. All of a sudden, we have a story structure as old as humanity. Tributes are no longer children about to be slaughtered, but contestants in a game. A game with high risks and high rewards. Each tribute has a backstory that is used to create a compelling narrative about them, their dreams and desires, their family and friends. Every one of them is marketed to a certain demographic that connects with them and sponsors them in the arena. Each year, Snow creates 24 celebrities from scratch, each year with a different arena, with different animals, weapons, and traps. And each year has one victor, one winner of the games who will receive all the attention afterwards, touring Pan Am and appearing every year after as a mentor in the games. For the capital citizens, the games are a hypercharged version of reality TV and social media. And for many families in districts 1, 2, and 4, the games are an even bigger deal. A subculture of career tributes emerged over the decades. Children who are trained their entire life to contest in the games and volunteer as tributes. Their parents care more about the reputation and social status that comes with being the family of a victor than if their child lives. Children become a social status symbol, their upbringing an investment to be inside the elite circle of Pan Am. But because these career families are so rich that they can train their children for the games, it makes the games as unequal as the rest of the society. For the poor districts, the games also turned into glorified entertainment that most people watch, but for them, it's part of their survival. Many children submit their names multiple times to receive additional food and oil that keeps them from starving. But even if a tribute from the poor districts should win, they will be traumatized for the rest of their lives. We see the trauma that the games left on Katniss, Peeta, and Haymitch. Trauma that they can't process and have to live with their entire life. Resurfacing every year when they are mentors, and again when they have children. And their children are very likely to get picked, as the child of a victor competing in the games is even more entertaining than a newcomer. And of course, we shouldn't forget about the sexualization of all tributes. They are made as attractive as possible for the audience, and after the games, the rich elite gets a taste. Finnick was 14 when he won the games, and afterwards, Snow forced him into prostitution. If he wouldn't do it, Snow would have his family killed. Finnick is the only one that speaks about it, but if you are attractive and from a poor district, you will share the same fate. With all these changes in the games, it is understandable why most people in the capital and the wealthier districts don't see the games as a form of oppression, but as ultimate entertainment. Tributes are not seen as human beings, but easily replaceable celebrities. Just as the Hunger Games books and movies themselves are entertainment for us. None of us support children murdering each other for the sake of entertainment. But as a fictional story, in the medium of a book and movie, we enjoy it, and even want more. The only ones who don't are the people in the poor districts, but they can be controlled through state violence. This authoritarian state of Pan Am worked for a while, until Snow had to realize that the power of media can also be used against him.
I have a message for President Snow. If we burn, you burn with us.
Katniss was just another tribute from District 12, but the sacrifice for her sister and willingness to fight allowed for perfect marketing material. Haymitch won the 50th Hunger Games and had 23 games to learn what it means to be a mentor, a marketing expert. Katniss's bravery gave her the attention she needed, and with a clever plan to turn Peeta and Katniss into a couple, Haymitch turned the 74th Games into one filled with drama, romance, and sponsorships to the very end. Even the game maker realizes this and creates a new rule, allowing them to win together. If you didn't root for the lovers before, now you definitely did. But instead of letting them win, the game maker, greedy for more drama, revokes the rule, and the first act of defiance is created. With a double suicide, Katniss tricked the game maker and showed the rest of Pan Am that she beat the capital. She beat Snow in his own game. Of course, Snow immediately threatens her, because if she incites a rebellion, people will die. And to Snow, the capital is the only authority that can keep Pan Am safe. As we now know about his childhood, it makes sense that he believes in his own illusion. Snow tries to stay in control and does not prepare for war. Either because he does not believe that a war can happen, or because he is just not good at it. He is a masterful game maker and ruthless president, but not a war general. Giving an emotional 16-year-old a platform to express her anger nationwide does not favor the capital. The capital is known to be extremely authoritarian. And when they allow Katniss on TV, it is no wonder the people rebel. And Snow has nothing to distract them with. No reality TV show with the previous victors or other sport events. He built the entire system of Panem on the assumption that the Hunger Games will be enough to control and distract the population. He only starts his own propaganda show once the rebellion is already in full force, which is far too late to slow it down. He reacts the only way he knows how, with the games. But instead of making the games about everything but Katniss and Peeta, he does the opposite. While he hopes that they will die in the games, it is not a sound strategy, as Panem is watching, and he can simply kill them intentionally. When Peeta announces that Katniss is pregnant, it does not only infuriate the districts, but also the capital. Sending a pregnant 17-year-old into the games to die is the line capital citizens are not willing to cross. But either way, there is no good option for Snow in this scenario. If he continues the games, capital citizens will be furious, but if he stops the games or replaces Katniss, he shows weakness. Surprisingly, he did not choose the simplest option that would discredit Peeta and Katniss, expose the truth. He could order an ultrasound check, broadcast the results nationwide, then have them executed. Or leak the images and videos of Katniss having a romantic relationship with Gale, which would make her seem even more dishonest, as she is having a child with Peeta. Or is it even Peeta's baby? There is so much possibility to spread gossip and discredit them. Regardless, the 75th Hunger Games were probably the most spectacular in the entire history of the games. A pregnant woman and her lover, victors of previous games who sacrificed themselves for her, and a large alliance between several districts who know about the rebellion. And of course, the spectacular ending that started the rebellion across Panem. In a war, control of information is vital, and if Snow wanted to keep his power, he would have to be way more brutal than he already is from the start. He has the power to control the narrative. He could have confronted Peeta on live television about Katniss' romance with Gale, and even gotten the truth out of Peeta, that Katniss was never pregnant. Snow needs to discredit Katniss to keep his power, but he never does. Even as the districts turn against him, he seems barely concerned with anything happening outside the capital. And this makes sense, considering that he poisoned all of his critics. When he poisons his loyal ministers, who are more experienced in economics and warfare than he is, nobody can and wants to help him, in fear of being poisoned themselves. He established a proxy council of yes-men who never confront him or his decisions, which is the doom of every government or company. Meanwhile, the situation in the capital is becoming dire, as more and more shortages are listed on TV. While the districts are used to hardship, the capital citizens are not. Most of them never experienced the war, and usually their life resembles a post-scarcity world. Sooner or later, they will turn against Snow. The rebels broadcast emotional videos of Katniss across Panem that the districts can connect to. Snow broadcasts interviews of a clearly tortured Peeta that are purely directed at Katniss. He wants to break Katniss emotionally, but with each new video of Katniss, it becomes less relevant if she stays alive, as the rebellion is gaining hold across the districts. The Mockingjay, which had become a fashion icon in the capital, becomes the official banner of the rebellion, making it the ultimate insult for Snow. Snow hates mockingjays. Then, Katniss sings the Hanging Tree song, originally composed by Lucy Gray, which Snow banned in the district. It must feel as the entire rebellion and their propaganda is specifically made to enrage him. Or the book's sequel is specifically made to please fans. As the rebels enter the capital, it becomes clear how little Snow is prepared for war. His only defense are traps from the Hunger Games and genetically modified animals. Just as the military of many European countries was budgeted down over the past decades and is overwhelmed with Russia's invasion of Ukraine, so did Snow not invest into a proper military force. Peacekeepers become useless when the population rebels and when there is no military logistics network to transport basic necessities to the capital. Regardless, many capital citizens trust Snow till the very end, until the capital planes bombed their children on live TV. While everyone believes it was Snow, the truth is more sinister. The truth of District 13. District 13 and its leader Coin are not interested in changing the institutions and system of Panam, but are purely out for a coup d'etat. Coin is a military soldier with the same mindset as Snow and does anything to gain power. She is the authoritarian leader of 13 and would have killed Katniss if she wasn't the face of the rebellion. Katniss has a huge influence over who becomes the next president, and because she dislikes Coin, Coin repeatedly tries to get her killed. When Katniss records a video in 8, hovercrafts bomb her last known location. Far too convenient to be a coincidence. When the rebels take over District 2, the future of Panam is decided. Without 2, the capital will run out of supplies within weeks. The rebels would just need to wait. Katniss decides to enter the capital, unknowingly that she would have gotten silently disposed of if she had stayed in 13. Except a few people in 13, nobody knows about Peter's tortured mind that is programmed to kill Katniss. Coin sends Peter to Katniss to heat up the propaganda videos, and then all of them to a special location for filming, which turns out to be full of traps and kills several of them, while Peter almost kills Katniss. Peacekeepers arrive after a few minutes, and a propaganda video is broadcasted by first Snow and then Coin, as if they both had it planned in advance. Katniss survives and makes her way to Snow's mansion to watch her sister getting killed in front of her. While the hovercrafts dropping the bombs were marked with the capital sign, the bombing was broadcasted live. Snow is a game maker. Coin is a soldier. There is no advantage that Snow gets from killing civilians, but so much more for Coin if it was in his name. And the bombs and strategy for this specific attack were developed by Gale in 13. Gale knows, but can't admit it when Katniss confronts him, because he has become a lapdog for the rebellion, ready to do anything, kill anyone, which ultimately breaks their relationship. Snow killing children was the red pill that even the most hardcore Snow believers could not swallow, so they would happily let Coin take over role of the president, which was exactly her plan. Besides Gale, Katniss, and a few others, nobody knew that Coin had bombed the children, and none of them could prove it. While the plan after Snow's defeat was to establish a republic with a centralized government, for now, Coin will be president, indefinitely. And just as Snow, she proposes another Hunger Games. Only at this point does Katniss realize that the system has not changed. Coin will be the next dictator, different than Snow, but keeping up the extractive institutions that sustained the inequality in Panam. Since the Reaping in the 74th Games, Katniss has been used by the adults around her for marketing a rebellion and into a life she never chose. Her relationship with Peter only worked out in the end because they share the same trauma and are the only ones left alive who can look each other in the eyes without judgment or pain. Katniss lost Prim, lost Gale, her mother left her, again, and Katniss is exiled into District 12. Peter convinces Katniss to have children, and while we see her smile, she remains broken. The books read like a tragedy. In the end, we don't know if anything has changed in Panam besides the games being over. Just as so many African nations still struggle to overcome the extractive institutions established by European colonialism, so could Panam. But one question remains. Did the capital really need to keep the districts as poor as they were and use them for slave labor? The capital had technologies that would make most of the manual labor in the districts obsolete. There would be more resources for the capital, while the districts would get better living standards. Did Snow hate the district so much? Well, we can actually answer this when looking at North Korea or the history of Europe. Whenever technological progress happens, economies get disrupted. When the printing press boosted education levels and literacy rates, it threatened the king and monarchs in power. Not only because people were getting smarter, but they moved into cities where they could find new work. And in dense cities, it is easier to spread information and organize against injustice. Snow wants control above everything else. And giving the districts a possibility to organize means losing control. It is very similar to why living standards in most of North Korea are among the lowest in the entire world. If Kim Jong-un would progress society, society would progress and go after him. But was the rebellion inevitable? Snow was a masterful game maker, and if he kept loyal and educated people around himself, instead of killing them, his system could have prevailed even longer. Colonialism and slavery ended because European countries became more pluralistic in their own society and constitution, which eventually meant equality for everyone. Snow is keeping this change from happening by isolating the districts from another and controlling them with peacekeepers. But to what end? The capital has made lots of technological developments that we can see when going from the 10th to the 74th Hunger Games. Assuming the capital eventually became so advanced that they end up with a literal post-scarcity society, what would be the point of still keeping the districts as slaves? Snow's system of Panam was only possible in a small time frame of human history. A time frame in which the Hunger Games were the only other option besides civil war, where centralized production of goods in different regions was most efficient for a broken nation, and where people were not educated and organized enough to demand changes to the system. But all systems are eventually changed, reformed, or replaced entirely. And Snow can't keep Panam in the past forever.